and some controversy as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of happiness, heartbreak. Let's talk about it right now.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we're the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your very first listen every day. Be sure you check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Locked On Rays, as well as our social media on Twitter, Instagram at Locked On Rays. And you can email us, reach out to us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. We love the voice memos. We love when you chime in and say where you're listening from and the background of your Rays fandom. So do not be shy or hesitant to reach out to us anytime. So, Ulises, let's get right into it. As I recall, recently the U.S. faced off against your country, Venezuela, in the World Baseball Classic, and USA reigned supreme in that. I'll just go ahead and let you vent, provide your thoughts, views, opinions, and just how you're recovering from that L that
This
Venezuela suffered.
this might be like a kind of a therapy session here. Look, man. First, I want to say that was a heck of a game. That was a heck of a game. It had everything that you wanted, maybe except for very solid. Well, actually, you did have some solid pitching as well, but no, it was terrific, man. 9-7 ball game. It had everything you wanted. Both lineups came out swinging the bats really well. I cannot be upset because this team really showed that they wanted it, man. I mean, the Venezuelan team was just playing with their hair on fire, and you got to be proud. You got to be proud that until the last out, they gave it their all. It's a heck of a U.S. lineup, though. I mean, you have Trey Turner batting ninth, and he has the audacity to hit a grand slam. Like,
Yeah.
that's what you're up against, when you're facing the U.S. lineup. So it was very difficult. I do think Omar Lopez was the right guy to be the manager for Venezuela. He did everything right, except, of course, in that eighth inning. I would not have brought out Jose Quijada again in the eighth inning. We've talked about this, how in the seventh inning, it was a very tense out to get. He comes in, he gets the strikeout for Kyle Tucker. He gets all crazy because of the reaction, the meaning that you're 6 outs away from beating the U.S. and going into the semifinal, right? Like, you have that high of an adrenaline. What have we always said on this podcast, Kevin, about that high of an adrenaline once you're off the out? Don't come back in. Why would you put that guy back in? That was the mistake. That was the mistake, and it cost him. He loaded the bases. Silvino Bracho, who was amazing in Winter League Baseball, I mean, just nails, man. And 0-2 count, and the changeup left it right down Main Street. Didn't go as low as he wanted it, and boom, Trey Turner does what a $300 million man is supposed to do with those pitches. So it sucks, heartbreak, man. But a buddy of mine was texting me on the game, and he said that I guess that's the perk of being having double nationality, Ulises, is that now you still have one more team that you can root for.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I'm still not out.
That's true. Which, by the way, with the World Baseball Classic, I've made this clear. I have not paid attention to it. I have not watched it. I have focused very little on it outside of the heroics of Randy Arozarena and the crazy injury of Edwin Diaz, which we'll get into and see how that affects the World Baseball Classic. But how has this WBC for you compared to ones in previous iterations as far as entertainment value and excitement and so forth?
I think it's been the most entertaining. Not only because more star players are saying yes, and it's not just like, if you look back at the US teams, for example, of 06 and 09, like they had big names, but it was big names that they were past their prime.
Right.
Griffey in 06, it's not the same Griffey that we remember. That's not the guy that hit 660 something home runs.
Rumor, he actually fell asleep in the batter's box during a World Baseball Classic game. That's what I heard anyway.
Maybe true. So no, and with social media and the engagement, and it's just been more fun to kind of share this with more people. Obviously, with the podcast and with anti-social media, I've been able to talk about it with other people that follow the podcast and interact with me on Twitter. So that has been really cool and really fun to see. But I will tell you this might come as a dagger in the hearts of Locked On Race listeners, of Race fandom, and probably you, Kevin. But I cannot be a hypocrite. I cannot be a hypocrite. I hate hypocrites in my life, so I cannot be one. I'm done booing Altuve. I'm done. I cannot boo the guy that I was cheering for when he wore my colors, and then when the season starts, then do a complete 180. I can't do it. So I've rationalized this in my brain. If I'm done booing Altuve, I'm done booing Correa, Springer, and everybody else. Everybody that was involved in it. It's been 6 years since it happened. It's been 4 years since the information came out. I'm done with the trash can bit. I understand listeners that want to hold that grudge forever, and they're calling them cheaters and all that. Look, man, everybody has their own personal journey. What I'm saying with this is my personal journey of holding that grudge with these guys. I'm done with it. I'm done.
Well, my question would be, if you still have a grudge out there with those particular players, if any of them were to join the Rays, how would you feel? What would your reaction be if George Springer was in a Rays uniform, if Correa was in a Rays uniform, if Altuve was in a Rays uniform, if fill in the blank was in a Rays uniform?
And I think that answer would be completely the same for every Rays fan across the board, because again, we can't be hypocrites. Do we not know that Charlie Morton was in that team? Do we not know that McHugh was in that team? Did they not play for the Rays? Were they not loved by Rays fandom? And before you tell me, oh, he was a pitcher, he was really, they were both pitchers, they were not involved. Everybody knew in that locker room what was going on. Everybody, pitchers and hitters. So don't bring me that, oh, McHugh and Morton, they're cute and lovable and they're pitchers. No. We already clapped for those guys. So again, can't be a hypocrite. I'm done with the booing bit.
If you had that much integrity and were so dead set on how wrong and shameful it was to the game of baseball, you would have blew the lid on it if you were calling McHugh or Charlie Morton, or you would have stood up and tried to put a stop to it. That's the issue with organizations where, a whole group of people are doing something wrong and you're kind of a bystander and you're kind of caught in the middle. So that makes it tough from that perspective.
I love the bystander, but we're both Seinfeld fans. Isn't that how they all met their end?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
being
good
bystanders.
Point.
Yeah.
We have more to discuss on the WBC, but first, Ulises, we have to tell the audience about something very important.
Yes, I'm really excited about this Ultimate Baseball GM. It's the new mobile game that will let you be the MLB GM that you've always wanted to be. And I know that you've always wanted to be an MLB GM because you're listening to a daily podcast on baseball. So within this game, you can manage every strategic aspect of the game. You can play through a season and then finally reach victory. I've tried this out. It's really cool. You can match up personalities of coaches to players and see how they can develop. I will give you a little bit of advice here, peek behind the curtain. If you act like the Rays franchise has, guess what? You will be kind of successful in this game. I'll leave you that little hint. So today, go to your app store and download Ultimate Baseball GM. Locked On Race listeners will get 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the code Locked On, LOCKEDON. So today, go to your app store, download this game, Ultimate Baseball GM. You can also download it at probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM, start your dynasty today.
Okay, because I've been so hands-off with the World Baseball Classic, March Madness is going on, folks. What do you want from me? Come on. Get on my level here. Are the new MLB rules in place for the World Baseball Classic?
No, sir. It's the last time we actually get quote unquote pure baseball with MLB stars. Yeah.
So the next WBC will have those new rules.
I would assume so. Yes, I would assume so.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Mhm.
Well, that's assuming we have a World Baseball Classic 4 years from now, because people are losing their minds that Mets closer Edwin Diaz sustained a season-ending right knee injury as he celebrated Puerto Rico's win. And now people are going off the handle and saying, at least I've heard some, again, maybe it's just a small contingent of people on social media and in the traditional media space and sphere as to, hey, just shut this thing down. Let's end it. But let's also remember, I mean, this is not the first time nor the last time that a professional baseball player, and particularly a professional pitcher, has hurt themselves in a quirky, odd, non-traditional manner. Let's also put that into perspective as well here, folks.
Yes. And before you're like, wait, the 2026 one is in trouble. Again, it's not, thankfully, because of the agreement, the CBA agreement. So it's already been marked into law. So 2026 is good so far. But you're right. I mean, there's been a lot of negative comments about the WBC, which obviously fans are fans, that they're fanatics, so they're emotional,
Right.
which means that they don't listen to logic. So when you tell them, hey, that could have happened anywhere, they're like, no, but it happened at WBC, the WC's fault. It's like, okay, well, you can cry about it. That's fine, and we understand where you're coming from, but it really isn't the WBC's fault. I mean, didn't Kendrys Morales broke his foot when he jumped on home plate like 12 years ago, celebrating a walk-off home run? Didn't Blake Snell break his toe coming out of a bathtub, as far as we know? Didn't Grant Balfour spend 6 weeks on the IL because he was, wrestling Jim Hickey?
Yeah.
Just to give you some Rays
Didn't
perspective
David
here.
Price hurt himself playing video games, suffering carpal tunnel syndrome? Didn't Will Smith tore his LCL taking off his shoes? Like, there's a myriad of crazy injury circumstances that guys have gotten hurt taking off their pants and their shirt.
Yes.
Like multiple times.
Oh, yes, and it happens every season. Those quirky things. I think Derek Holland once tripped going down the stairs on his kid's Legos or something like that. Like, it can happen anytime. And you know what? It happened to Venezuela on Saturday's game against the U.S. Daniel Bard just hit him straight on the right thumb, and now Altuve is going to be out for, I think, 6 to 10 weeks. So with the Venezuelan perspective I can give you, it sucks. It sucks that he got hurt, and it sucks that we lost him for the next 5 innings in that game, because he would have been really helpful. But if you ask Altuve and if you ask Edwin Diaz, and you tell them, hey, would you do that again? They would say 100% yes, 100% yes. And I think I might have gotten a little bit of blowback when we were talking about the WBC before it started, and I said, hey, they're going to be playing as hard as they have ever played. Wander Franco is going to care more about a game wearing the Dominican jersey than a playoff wearing a Rays jersey. I saw some Locked On Rays listeners like balk at that, like, oh, you're crazy. I was proven right. Like, see every quote by every Rays player and by other franchises, and they're saying the same thing, man. Like, this is more important than the World Series. Randy Arozarena, after making that catch, literally said to Ken Rosenthal, that catch felt better than hitting home runs in the World Series. Punto. It just does.
I mean, talk about that. That's a great segue there with Randy, because we know it. We know it. He loves the bright lights. He loves the spotlight. He loves when the moment is largest. I mean, there will be a day probably when he's in a Yankees uniform or a Dodgers uniform or a Cubs uniform, and he just thrives and thrives and thrives, because he'll have that 45,000 cheering him day in and day out. And that's a reason, and that's where I think it's good for baseball and for the Rays, where Randy does something like that. He performs at peak level for Team Mexico, because people start Googling Team Mexico. They start reading about Randy, and then they realize that he plays on the Rays, or they already knew that, and they might be more inclined or interested in, hey, maybe I will watch or check out a Rays game or read more about the Rays. Or maybe he turns and transfers some people that live and are from Mexico into Rays fans. I mean, again, Randy's not the only Team Mexico player on the Rays. There's also Isaac Paredes. So maybe that kind of provides a little gateway and avenue to grow and expand your fan base in some shape or form as well.
Yes, and the Rays do need to do that. They need to tap into that. And you've seen how they've done that in the past with Akinori Iwamura from Japan and Yoshi Tsutsuga. Unfortunately, that was a failed experiment. But, with Ji-Man Choi, the Korean stores did have Tampa Bay Rays hats because of Ji-Man Choi.
Right.
So, no, I think that's a great point. If the WC is made to, grow the game around the globe, it's also a chance to grow MLB's brands, like the franchises. So that's a great point. If somebody who's a baseball fan in Mexico but is not really tied into a particular club, because that's how it is when you're abroad. You kind of just follow your countrymen.
Right.
That's how it used to work for me. I wasn't really a fan of any team. I just used to, okay, what is Alex Gonzalez doing? What is Johan Santana doing? What is Carlos Zambrano doing? Like, that's what I cared about. Bobby Abreu, Bagley Ordonez. But once you move into a country, then that changes. But if you don't, this would be a great opportunity for saying, hey, Randy Rosarena, he's the MVP of Mexico. I'm going to see 162 games of his team play, because that's who my favorite player is. Like, that's a great point, man.
The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel. It is America's #1 sportsbook. That is because new customers get a no-sweat first bet for up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So do not miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet for up to $1,000 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON, to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Going back to the Edwin Diaz injury, I would understand if there was more vitriol and hate if his injury came on a throw, him trying to dial it up to 101 or 102, something along those lines. But I do wonder, this does make me interested and curious to see how, if at all, MLB teams will navigate allowing or putting certain restrictions and protocols in place for their players that want to participate in the WBC. Maybe it's one of those things where this just gives teams like the Mets and the Yankees more of a reason or excuse not to allow some of their superstar players to participate, or they put in some sort of addendum in their contract or something in there that reads, hey, if you get hurt or injured playing in the World Baseball Classic, then a portion of your salary, for the time that you're injured and unable to play for the big league ball club, that gets wiped out. I mean, there's all sorts of language in MLB contracts of what types of activities players can and can't do. I mean, you can't necessarily. You're definitely not allowed to wrestle and participate in boxing, and I mean a lot of other things like skydiving, skiing, motorcycle racing are strongly prohibited as well. So I wonder if that would kind of be a little add-in to future MLB contracts with that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, obviously, if they're playing, it's because the insurance was going to pay if anything happens. So the Astros and the Mets are not going to be on the hook for Altuve and Edwin. But yeah, there could be future stipulations in players' contracts where something like that could happen. But I did learn a couple of things that teams were already doing during this WBC that I wasn't aware of. Mark DeRosa said after the Venezuelan game, he said that they put on Daniel Bard for too long because there's a stipulation from MLB teams that if a reliever gets up in the bullpen, they have to throw. You can't just do the ups and downs in the bullpens. MLB teams don't want to do that. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an insight of like, oh, it's much more tough to make those bullpen
Right.
decisions if you're a WBC manager. And then Omar Lopez, the Venezuelan manager, said that Jose Alvarado wasn't ready for that 8th inning, but regardless, he was only available to get 4 outs. That was it.
Yeah.
So the Phillies already told Omar, like, you can use him, but only for 4 outs. That's it.
Yeah.
So
that must make the job really tough for that country's manager. And it also, again, I'm not anti-WBC by any means, but again, I think
you're
it
not.
kind
I
of
know you're not.
I think it dilutes the product and what happens on the field where all these clubs, and I understand what they're trying to do. I mean, they put a lot of investment into money, and at the end of the day, you want your team to win a World Series. But when you add in all these, what you can and cannot do, what you're not allowed to do, that also, muddies up the waters a little bit too.
Yeah, and this is the thing that I think we've talked about on a past mailbag is, FIFA with the World Cup, Messi isn't trying to, oh, PSG, can I go play for Argentina?
Mm-hmm.
No, he just goes because it's just
Right.
an independent thing. So if MLB ever gets to gets the WBC under their thumb and WBC becomes its own entity, I think that would be better for the sport, because you would see more stars play and not have so many restrictions be placed upon them. Maybe it would be more difficult to get insurance. So maybe
Or maybe the
that would
players,
be,
maybe the teams then outright would say, "Hey, you can't play in this at all." There could be a counter
maybe.
effect to that.
Maybe. So it would be very interesting to see what would happen. But if it works with basketball,
Yeah.
it works with basketball, it works with soccer. I don't know about hockey, but I'm sure that it works with hockey. It's just baseball that really is the problem of the league imposing an international competition, but then restricting its own international competition.
Right.
I believe that's the only sport. So it's frustrating, but it's still a great show. It's still a great show, and I've had a lot of fun watching it.
Well, and I think, hearing some comments from Wander, Mejia, and Bethencourt and Harold Ramirez that they really appreciated the opportunity. You can tell the passion that they draw from that experience. And again, it's a little bit higher level than your humdrum spring training game. So you would think that the guys that are participating in this event are maybe a little bit more ready and more prepared for the regular season. The other thing too, maybe, if you're really trying to mitigate injuries, maybe in the future, if there's a way to push the World Baseball Classic later into the month of March, like going right up against the MLB season, so these players are super loose, as loose as you can be for the start of the regular season. I don't know, but so I'll be curious to see how it all shakes out. And evidently from our listener base out there, they've been pretty bullish on the World Baseball Classic thus far. We put it out on Twitter, fill in the blank. This year's World Baseball Classic has been ... Joshua Garner says exciting and electric. Matt Germain says outstanding. Justin says exciting. Jay Isaac Sr. says lit. John says wicked sick. Kevin is missing out. I guess I am missing out. But again, March Madness is going on. I got Sweet 16 on my mind, guys. Jake Stokes says incredible. Every game, even the blowouts, incredible. Jay Ardle says in fuego. Argenis Rashad says the best to date. And Chris Snyder says hopefully a preview to Randy's season. Yeah, that would be nice if he just, go off and give us a 30-30, 40-40 season.
Ooh, yeah.
Bat 300. Love that.
If you're a Rays fan and you're seeing how Randy is playing, how Isak also came through, guys, with a 2-run single on that elimination game against Puerto Rico. It's been intense. Now, you've been a staunch advocate to reduce the number of games of the regular season, and we've had our back and forths, and I see your premise. I know that it can't be every year because it would dilute its specialness. You have to keep it 3 to 4 years every World Baseball Classic, of course, and I'm still up that. But perhaps a way that you can kind of fix the whole, oh, they're not ready, they're not amped up, is kind of put it in the middle, like they do with the World Cup in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
You put it in July, June area. 3 weeks off. If you're not playing, you're hanging out with your family or whatever. You go to your spring training facility to kind of keep up time. I don't know. I think maybe a lot of fans slash teams would be worried that,
Yeah.
hey, if my guy gets injured in July, I'm gonna lose him for October.
Right.
And then if you put it in November, hey, guess what? The guys that played in playoff baseball, they're not gonna show up because they're already too tired. So honestly, I don't think there's a right time to do so. I think March is as good as it's going to get.
Maybe every 3 or 4 years, however often the World Baseball Classic is going forward, you have it start April 1st, go through April 15th, and that's when you start the regular season. Because that's when people are really, I think, ready for baseball. Maybe you get more eyes on that as sort of a primer for the start of the MLB season. And I'm sure you could move around and gerrymander spring training a little bit to that extent, but maybe that's a solution. And that year, the year that there's the World Baseball Classic, teams are playing 150 games instead
Don't
of
hate it.
162.
Don't
And
hate
really make it an important celebration, heighten it to the point where this is such a big deal. We believe this is such a big deal that we are pushing back the amount of regular season games every 4th year.
I agree with you. I agree with
So-
you. I think that's not an impossibility. Maybe teams would be like, that's less revenue. No, are you insane? I don't know. But all I can say is it's been really fun to watch all of these teams compete.
Yeah.
And just the passion. I mean, what comes out is just so much human emotion that you don't see that until maybe late in the playoffs. Like Trey Turner after that grand slam in the post game conference, which of course I had to watch because I'm a masochist. He said, that's the loudest I've ever been in a stadium ever.
Wow.
This guy just played in the playoffs. He's been in the World Series with the Nationals. Like, this is how raucous of a crowd it can be. Like, this is huge. So everybody that's talking crap, saying like, oh, it's meaningless, like, then you're just not a baseball fan, you're a franchise fan. And sorry that you're missing, you're not getting the point here.
So who wins the whole thing in your estimation?
Well, I think the US is a damn good candidate. I think the US is better than Cuba. Of course, guys, we're recording this right before the game, so we don't know how this is going to shape out. USA, Cuba, and then on the other side is Japan, Mexico. You could see a Japan US final, which would be really good for baseball. Like, that's Ohtani v Trout. That's just like in the World Cup, like Mbappe v Messi, teammates but different nationalities going at it in the final. Like, that's huge. I think but Mexico has been really good. I don't know. I'm dilly-daddling here.
Now, are all these games going forward played in the U.S.?
Yeah, everything is in Miami since the.
Oh, okay. Well, there's home field advantage for you.
yeah,
for the U.S. and maybe to Cuba to some extent.
Well, yesterday, from people that were there were like, okay, it was a Venezuelan home field advantage. So with Cuba, if it was a home field advantage with Venezuela, with Cuba in Miami, are you serious? Like, that's 99%. So U.S. has it tough because of that. I do think they're going to come through with Cuba. I think U.S. is going to the finals. I think Japan is just too good. I know Mexico has been a great story, but I think Japan is just too good. I think it's going to be U.S., Japan. And ultimately, Japan has really worked hard for every single classic. They get together a month before, all of them, dude. And they do exhibitions in their country. Like, they do batting practice and like they invite their country to just see them in the Tokyo Dome. Like, they like this. They love it. They work hard for it. I don't see how you can bet against Japan.
And Japan just has a great style of baseball too.
Yes.
Just all the imports that have come in over the years. I mean, Ichiro Suzuki is one of my favorite players all time. So I digress on that. Good stuff. Good stuff. Hopefully you all enjoyed the WBC talk. We have more to talk about on this week, of course. In the meantime, thank you for making us your first listen every day. Now make your second listen, the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast. That is also free and available on all platforms. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.